Hello, everyone. We are at the studio of CKO Digital, based in the great city of Houston. We are Untitled Final, a bunch of designers talking about design things. Today, we'll be talking about a much more broader topic of how much social media has changed pretty much everything in today's society, but more specifically, we want to touch on how it's affected creatives and designers just as a whole, and then kind of probably also go into other topics with regard to it. Before jumping into any of it, though, we do have a new person on the podcast. Last week or last two podcasts, we had Chris, who was a design intern here, but he pretty much got swamped at school. So he's back at school. Not going to be coming in here anymore, but we have Jimmy now. Jimmy has been a full-time employee here. He's primarily under marketing and design. Yeah. So yeah, going to have Jimmy on more often on these now.
Yeah. So Jimmy, share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, at least introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, my name is Jimmy. Thanks for asking. I went to the University of Houston as a digital media major, and I emphasized in package design and print.
Sick.
Nice.
Thanks. And I work here. R.I.P. Chris.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris.
Shout out to Chris.
Hopefully he does one block. He'll do that. He'll be fine. He'll survive. But yeah, just kind of kicking things off. So social media and how it's infected, or not infected, but impacted designers and creatives. This is something that we kind of mentioned the last podcast, like right at the end. This is definitely a topic that I've been kind of thinking about for a while. Just because it's kind of crazy to think about. Like social media is kind of like the one thing in our generation that's been such a game changer. It's like, honestly, in my opinion, like in the lines of like discovery, electricity, or like the internet, like social media is like that other thing that's just totally kind of turned everything on its head. But yeah, in terms of designers and creatives, like how do y'all think it's kind of like impacted us? What do you think it's kind of given us? Any tools or pretty much anything?
I mean, it allows people to connect when they're on the opposite side of the globe, and you guys could share design tips and talk to each other, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like even more than that, though, I kind of feel like it's given designers kind of like a level playing field to kind of put themselves out. Like any kind of creative, not even just us designers, like photographers, videographers, musicians, people that know how to make things. Like it's literally giving every single type of person that could make something like a platform for themselves to kind of put themselves on.
Right. I think there's even the vocabulary has changed. There's like a term for that. It's like a creator. It's like a creator of what? Of anything, just content, just creating content. And before social media, there wasn't really like that wasn't used as a creator. You were either a photographer, videographer. I mean, you could do many things, many disciplines, but social media kind of gave you that ability to say, oh, I'm a creator. Oh, and people understand that you create content for whatever it is that you do. So social media is again, it's just a tool also for us as designers to kind of put our work out there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I do kind of also want to go back to Jimmy's like point is like it does kind of put us in connection with other people around the world. So I think it's a great inspiration tool for us as well, because you can kind of see what people are doing within your own fields in different parts of the country. So like something like big as a designer, like for me personally, like I like looking at like international designers, seeing what they're doing. Because I think that also like gives like other perspective, like what are they kind of looking at? Like what software they're using? What are they kind of getting more into? Like, for example, like right now I'm starting to notice a lot of European designers, or like maybe in schools, or I don't know who's kind of pushing this, but it seems to be like the most forward thinking kind of trends right now in design in terms of Europe is like delving into 3D and like seeing how they could utilize 3D to do like basic like two-dimensional design, like with like ads or print or whatever it is, or even web.
But Europe's always been on the forefront of design, really.
That's true. Yeah. Like with Bauhaus and modernist movement, all that kind of stuff. So I think like having that level of connection, I think is also pretty awesome. Like it allows us like in a very inexpensive, like you don't have to pay anything to kind of see
you don't
stuff.
have to buy a book. You don't have to go to a class, so you don't have to travel to Europe. You can essentially just hashtag something Europe design or European design or anything, and you have a curated list of everything that you want to see.
Yeah, and it's definitely kind of allows us to also kind of like teach ourselves whatever it is we want to do, like through YouTube. Like you can pretty much like learn whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I've learned how to do videography in the past couple of months just by, well, I haven't learned, I'm still practicing,
Right.
but definitely it's like I've learned because I commute here a lot and it takes me a long time to get here.
Mhm.
So I take advantage of those 2 hours that I commute to learn something.
Yeah.
I've learned everything from knife making to mechanic to auto body to videography, a bunch of
Mhm.
stuff just by going through social media.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. I think that's another like example of like how much of a level playing field it is. Because another thing that I've been wanting to kind of that I've been thinking of it lately is like our generation, it seems like we tend to complain about like stuff outside of like our creative aspirations or whatever, and like blame certain things on like politics or how we were brought up. I mean, obviously all these things have a big effect on like us as individuals. But I think being like living now, like in this day and age, having social media and having like these tools at our disposal, like there's sometimes almost like not much, there's still excuse for you to kind of like be held back,
Right.
like be deterred from certain things, or like so there are obstacles for people all over the world, especially in America as well, just like any other place. But it's like I think we have to acknowledge that we have a really great tool here,
Right.
where it's like we can kind of pick ourselves up and kind of create something for ourselves, kind of regardless of what your situation is. Just because like you kind of, if you just on social media and any of the platforms, you kind of see just wildly different people kind of create their own lane, create their own audience, curate it, and
Mhm.
completely thrive of it and make an entire career out of it. So I think
Right.
that's pretty awesome.
And it also gets, it allows you to go around your fears. Let's say your fear of public speaking, your fear of, talking to people, your fear of showing your face or
Right.
whatever. Like you can create a whole identity without showing your face. Just your work speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
And before, I mean, I'm sure you'd have to go to networking events and had to get your name out there and maybe do some public speaking. And, it allows you to just cut corners as well to for anybody.
Yeah, because it's definitely kind of like turned a lot of like industry models kind of like on its head in that kind of way. Like you no longer have to go like this traditional route to make it,
Right.
quote unquote. Like, for example, if you're like a musician, like you don't have to be put on to like a record label first to kind of blow up. No, just put yourself on.
Yeah. Cut the
iTunes,
middleman.
SoundCloud.
Cut the middleman out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess like in terms of how it's affected like industries, like how have y'all kind of like seen that, or like what's y'all's take on how social media's kind of like turned that on its head?
Well, social media, with the rise of social media, people's attention spans kind of decrease.
Yeah,
So-
for sure.
So they kind of had to try even harder with their content
Mm-hmm.
to be able to be recognized nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could make a really good content and slap like all 30 hashtags on Instagram, but you still had to maintain that quality of work.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll be forgotten the next week or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
So-
think it definitely takes a lot of consistency. Like every creator, let's just say creator because there's just so many.
Mm-hmm.
Like artists, like anybody, they have like a history of just good work, constant work, and it takes like until like let's say episode 99 for them to kind of be recognized.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while for you to get there, and it's all about the consistency of the creator to get there as well. Because just because you have all the tools doesn't necessarily mean you're just going to make it in episode
Right.
1, unless we talk about the phenomenon of a viral video, but that's just
I think that definitely kind of speaks to the generation we're living in too, because I feel like people might have that expectation. Like it's like social media does have like a downside of like you only see the best of the best, like these like viral moments, and it sets up for like unrealistic expectations.
Right.
It's like, okay, I could do that. I could go viral. I mean, yeah, you could try it, but you have to be like very lucky or like very skilled or whatever it is,
right.
So I think also this generation, in terms of like a bad thing, it does obviously, like you said, decrease our attention span. But I think it also, since we only see the highlights of people's lives and like we only see the highlights of like these creatives that are just popping off, or what we think they're just popping off, we don't see the back end of it. We don't
Right.
see the 10 plus years that it actually took for them to get from point A to point B, you know?
Yeah. Until we kind of, somebody says, "Oh, how did you get here?" And then they tell their story. It's
Right.
like, "Oh, wow, and then you go and look at their videos from before or their content, and you're like, "Oh, wow, they've been drawing since they were 3 or 5, or they've been, they were a prodigy from the beginning, but they were just never recognized until years from now."
Mm-hmm.
But I think definitely
It's a good or bad thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good or bad thing.
Yeah, it has its pros and cons for sure.
I think also in terms of education, like how we were talking about how I've learned a couple of things from YouTube. YouTube is just a bunch of people sharing a bunch of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is not right. Right? A lot of it is just like a bunch of people just trying things that they don't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of platforms online that allow you to pay for actual creators instead of having to go to school, which they're charging a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
So you can essentially cut the middle person out, which is the education system, and go directly to the expert and be like, "Hey, I want to learn from you."
Yeah. I think that definitely kind of draws back to just like everything's a level playing field now, which I think is, I don't know, it's been a pretty incredible thing. Pretty much anyone can kind of pick up and start their own idea, their own concepts, brands, start their own career. But they have to kind of put the effort into it, the time into it. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. Because like the saying goes, like if it was easy, anybody could do it. And right now everybody's doing it, but it's not easy. So
yeah,
you could definitely see the skill whenever it comes to like everyone doing it, but just only the few that actually can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And just like you guys said, it's all about the longevity and how consistent you guys do it. Because there's a lot of people with great skills out there. And a lot of times I feel like with social media, a lot of people don't really, just like you guys said, people don't see the work that goes into it. So I guess it creates a sense of entitlement for some people.
Yeah, you only see the end result on social media.
Yeah.
So like even like us as creatives, like if you see a graphic, like we understand like it took this person X amount of time probably just to make that one thing. But yeah, like the general public, those like they flip through it, see it for like a second, and like, oh wow, cool, and then keep going. Yeah, it has its 15 minutes of fame type thing.
More like 2 seconds of fame.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of like also how social media is affected, aside from like us, but also just like brands and businesses, I think it's also like the people that have like already established thing going on for themselves. Like they're not like startup creatives that are trying to kind of create their own lane, create their own audience or whatever. Other brands that have already, businesses and brands that have existed before social media. It's definitely also kind of changed the game for themselves, obviously. So in terms of like marketing, I think it's given like an incredible amount of direct access to their customers. So like in the last podcast, like we talked about how general public like opinion can kind of change the direction of certain companies and like kind of question what it is they do like immediately. So I think it's pretty interesting that like businesses have that access now to talk directly like that. Instead in like years prior before this, like you couldn't really have a open discussion like that in any kind of way. You can't really think or talk to your customers in such a way. It's always just kind of like, this might work and then put it out and then hopefully you make some money back. Do y'all have any thoughts on like how businesses and other brands can kind of been affected by social media? Pros, cons?
I think it definitely has an advantage for them to have a direct feedback from their audience. It kind of gives you an idea of who's following you and who's just doesn't care about your brand. So it definitely created a following, and that's also a new kind of terminology. Like before, it was just you might have an audience, but I mean, you just have like marketing was kind of different. It was just like everything was shoved down your throat, and it's like you take it because that's all you could do. But now it's like people are actually following these companies and allowing to curate those ideas and be like, okay, I just want to follow these brands. And the big companies, they understand that, so they create the content for their audience as well.
It's definitely made data like a big currency this day and age.
Yeah,
like knowing what each person's interests are. So obviously this has been like kind of like an ongoing discussion of like where privacy begins and ends.
Mhm.
So like, what's y'all's like take on how social media has affected privacy? And like, people always joke about, I was like, I was talking about this product the other day, and
Right.
then
I think that's
same day I was seeing ads on Facebook.
That's 100% true. Like every single person that I've talked to,
Mhm.
it's like, oh yeah, we're talking about this, and then all of a sudden I was scrolling and I saw an ad about it.
Does that bother you though? Like, does that like, do you care that much about your privacy?
I mean,
to a point, I think everyone cares about their privacy. It's just how big is your bubble of privacy? So it's like, do you care about data? Like people knowing the facts about you?
You know, like some Ron Swanson type shit.
yeah.
Right. I'm getting off the grid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's like, I think there's like rings of privacy. Like you have like stuff that people already know. Your ethnicity, your age, your sex, your location, like all that stuff you can look online, and it's like government records. But then there's more personal stuff, and then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So how much access does a company have to that? I mean, there's got to be a limit, right?
Yeah. I think just like you said, a lot of people care about their privacy to like some type of level. But the thing is, a lot of these marketing people, they don't really like intrude on you,
right?
In a sense. I mean, yeah, they're probably bombarding you with a lot of ads that pertain to you,
Right.
but that's mostly because you agreed to that stuff anyway. Like,
but did you though at the beginning? Like,
that's what the Facebook thing was.
Yeah, the whole Facebook thing, right?
You agreed to the terms whenever you created your account,
right?
I mean, you
it's
probably
like,
didn't. You just click the button.
Like, I mean, you click on everything. Do you actually read agreements? Like, do you actually?
So that's the other question, though. So it's like, how much can you really complain, or how much can the public really complain about privacy if they're literally clicking away, being okay with it because they're indifferent about reading a few pages of a disclaimer,
so
and
maybe
then complain
it's
about
like
it later.
About the seriousness of those things, because like whenever you're signing a contract, let's say for a job or for a loan or for anything, like you look at those details because it's affecting your life 100%. So is this actually affecting your life? Like giving away your privacy? I mean, in reality, I mean, it does affect your life because you get all of a sudden you start getting all these ads that spike up in interest or whatever. And it's like, you don't even know that it's happening.
Yeah. Would you rather have ads that don't have any personal connection to you whatsoever, or would you rather have curated ads?
Right. That's another thing.
I think I would have curated ads.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like I wouldn't want to just random ads about a bunch of stuff like billboards.
Right.
Like right now we have billboards and it's like, oh my God, I hate that
sign.
I do
not want to have an insurance ad thrown at me right now. It's like, I really don't care.
Right.
But if you show me a shoe that came out recently,
there you go.
That's another thing. I think there's pros and cons, definitely. But I think the privacy issue is just depending on
how
intrusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also just that individual person as well. Because you have like the extreme, like the Ron Swanson, or like you have like, I don't want to use myself, but it's like, so I personally don't really care when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, I'll check the box, cool, shove ads down my face that honestly probably interest me anyways.
Right.
I really don't care. Even if like the government's looking at me with this little camera right now, so you're staring at my chest, like you're wasting your time.
Yeah. Your FBI agent looking through your laptop is like this guy.
Or like recording everything. Because like even
or like Alexa, it's just like hearing you all the time.
I was literally about to say that we got the Google one, not
Google
Alexa.
Home?
Yeah, the Google Home. They gave it to us, or they gave it to Melissa because she has, I don't know, she had like some subscription with them or something. I don't know what it was, but they gave it to her for free.
Right.
So we have one now. But literally the other night, she was like, Brian, this entire thing is like on all the time listening to us because it's voice activated. So it always has to be listening. So like whenever you say the keyword and then it starts turning on or whatever, you know,
it has to be listening.
So it's while it's listening, is it collecting this or is it just like filter? Is it just like going in one ear, out the other?
I mean,
do you think it's collecting data?
I mean, how it's so easy. It's the same with your phone.
Yeah.
How
Siri.
hard could it be to just run the microphone? It's like, yeah, you have to do it, but I mean, that's why there's back ends and like back doors and front doors and side doors and whatever door.
Are y'all cool with that level of privacy? Like things listening to you like that and recording that kind of stuff?
Well, it's like,
I mean, I disable Siri. I don't trust that bitch.
Oh my God. All right.
Yeah. But it's like, yeah, I think it just depends on the person, really.
Yeah.
It depends on the person because, I don't know, it just depends on their culture, how, like, there's people that live with a a big community and they don't care. Like
Yeah.
everybody hears everything, but there's people that are very like just into themselves. They don't want anybody knowing anything about them. I think those would be a little bit more affected
You're right.
than that.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it too. Is like whenever she was talking to me about that, I was like, honestly, I don't really care if it is listening to us because like we're talking about nonsense anyways.
Right.
And if they are storing it, that's a bunch of wasted information that's just like taking up space.
That's what you
Yeah.
think, but I mean that's how they're able to, you know,
put ads in front of
put
your face.
ads in front of you, and not just
That's
ads,
right.
like
Put
they're
all the
able
ads
to
in
do a
front of you.
bunch of stuff. Yeah, I think data is, you know, it's a currency, like you said.
Yeah.
That's how we pay for everything. That's how we pay for Facebook, MySpace. That's how we pay for all these different platforms that are essentially free, but they're not.
Yeah. No, there's something I was going to mention off of that as well. I have to skip this bit. I don't know. I've lost it, but it was something with regard to like how like these like devices kind of listening in onto everything. I don't know. It's completely left my brain. Apologize.
Well, yeah, but now we have, you know, I think we think that technology has kind of plateaued, but in reality, it's kind of gone in a different direction. We're thinking, oh, we want more innovation. We want more, you know, we want something different because, you know, for the past, what is it, maybe 7, 8, 10 years, there really hasn't been an improvement of like things. Like we still have laptops. We still have desktops. We still have phones with screens, with touch screens.
Yeah, we definitely need to like adapt for sure. Because I think that was, you just reminded me what I was going to think of. But pretty much like the creation of social media, like this is new territory, like as a society. So it's like there are these like pros and cons that are coming at us, and as they come at us, we're learning how to deal with them. So like in the case of privacy, like I don't know if y'all watched like whenever Mark Zuckerberg got pulled into, what was it?
The Congress, yeah,
Congress, and he had to like defend himself up there. Like the questions that were even asked him, was like you could tell like these older people like have no idea what's going on.
It's like,
but I mean that's true, like not just because they're old or whatever, but like just as a general public, like we also don't know to a certain extent, regardless of how old you are.
Right.
But yeah, like there's certain elements that me as a young person I could acknowledge, like, okay, yeah, it's a given. Like we're giving them data by plugging in, I like X amount of things on my Facebook account, and that a person or a company could then use that data to like put certain ads in front of my face. But like older generations may not have caught on to that, and like they feel like they're being infringed on, or like they're being too closely watched or monitored. Right. So it's like also I think as a society, I think we're kind of learning how to tread these waters. So there are going to be like these kind of bumps in the road. So like where are these lines drawn? What is okay? What is not okay? Can you listen to me? Can you watch me? I don't know. You know?
And yeah, like what you said, like government is maybe they're basing their decisions on laws that were passed at the beginning of the broadcasting kind of generation, the radio and all these things where it's like, oh yeah, you can put up an antenna there because it's okay. You can do that because, I mean, you're just broadcasting to these people and the laws haven't changed. Now you have 5G that's like can super blazing speeds and it's like right outside your door. And I think, like you said, I think there's hiccups and bumps on the road because not everyone's in the same level of either knowledge or just, you know, the government's like way in the past, and then
how to regulate and everything.
Yeah, these companies are just taking advantage of that, and then the public is just, they're like, oh yeah, just give me free. But in reality, it's just everything is just kind of not
a free for all right now.
Yeah,
I mean, which is interesting, but it's definitely like a interesting feeling to kind of be in this situation right now, like this point in history where like there is this one thing that's kind of totally changing everything up. Because another thing that I really want to kind of touch on was like how it's affected industries and how it's kind of like turned certain things on their head. So something that I've been like watching a lot recently is like the rise and fall of like comedians, kind of, or like how I'm just gonna give like this one example of like this one industry pretty much, and how social media has kind of changed that, where like whenever to be like a successful comedian, like back in the day, you had to kind of like be put on to certain networks like Comedy Central, or you had to kind of get like some special that was like put on by like HBO or something like that.
Right.
So you had to have like, so you were like you're like held back by like these higher ups that were making these final decisions that would affect the rest of your life pretty much. So like you weren't in complete control. Like you had to kind of be put on. Whereas now there's like this one really good comedian. His name is Andrew Schulz. Like he pretty much took the control in his own hands now that there's like that creation of YouTube. So like instead of like waiting to be approached by like a Netflix or Comedy Central to like, hey, we want to give you a special. He was like, you know what? Let me just put my own content out. Let me go to my shows, put on shows locally, record myself, and then put those out onto YouTube, either the entire thing or like clips of my set or whatever, you know? And then like slowly over time, he's built up an audience. Now he's like the #1 comedian. So it's like, that's like one example of one industry that's kind of like completely changed because social media has been kind of total level playing fields. Like what do you all think of like that kind of thing as well, where it's like other industries are just not really keeping up, or they're trying to, or people are finding like kind of new ways to succeed?
Well, with that type of model, it's kind of trend based in general. With companies following the trends of, you know, YouTubers, famous YouTubers that are always consistent with their work. I think content creation in social media just does all the heavy work for the company, and the company could just reach out to you and, you know, just give you like an ad to do for them, you know? I feel like it just makes it so much easier for them. But at the same time, I feel like it kind of lowers the standards of the people being accepted into those industries, if that makes sense.
Because like anyone could kind of like put their hat in the ring, kind of.
Yeah. Instead of like before, you have to, you know, go through all these leaps and obstacles just to do that.
I don't know. Like,
right?
I feel like there could be some pretty shitty things put out there, even if it is like a Disney or like a bigger company. Like last time we touched on Sonic, like that's a major motion picture put on by some big old like production company, you know, but it looks like trash. So like, I don't know if like I'm not sure if I would like kind of agree with like quality is necessarily being affected. Like shittier quality is just being put out. Yeah, that's true. But like the stuff that actually like raises to the top though and like gains a major following, like it has to be good. Like it can't be crap.
Yeah, I think
if it's like put on by yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's a reflection of like the market as well. So if you have like a great product, you know, it's like if you have a great business, the market's going to dictate whether you succeed or fail, right? And before it was kind of like only like Hollywood could make the movies. Like if you wanted to be like a movie maker, only Hollywood, you know, if you wanted to be a star, you had to go to Hollywood. If you wanted to be, let's say, a designer, you had to go to New York. If you wanted to be anything, you had to go to that specific industry, you know, and like now, the source. Right, the source. And with the market, like let's say with capitalism or just, you know, a company-based marketing system, like you could essentially make a company anywhere, but it's going to dictate on how good your product is. So I think it's kind of like a reflection of that, like social media leveled the playing field for the creators to just say, okay, you can do it, but if you're good enough, you can make it.
Right. You just have to do it.
You just have to do
put
it.
in the work.
You have to, and you also have to be good enough, because if you're not good enough, like you won't get anything on YouTube. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of great YouTubers and they don't have any followers, and I'm like, why? Maybe they haven't really.
It just takes time.
Yeah, it just takes time.
Yeah.
Like you might be like an early adopter type of thing, where it's like you're like one of the early people catching on, but wait like 5 years and then.
Like if you look at a lot of the YouTubers that are, you know, have millions of followers, if you look at their first video, they're like 10-year-old kids talking about products and like I don't know if you know who what's his name? I forgot his name. Marcus. He reviews iPhones, and his first video he was like 12 in like 2010 talking about the first iPhone.
Damn, that's
you
crazy.
could barely hear it. Like you could terrible quality, terrible everything.
So it's even a level playing field for like young people, like children, teenagers. Like teenagers can create a career kind of by themselves. I mean, they grew like, I guess like Gen Z, they're pretty fortunate in the fact that they grew up in technology and the internet, so they know how to use it. So they already have a leg up on older generations that didn't necessarily grow up with it, so they don't necessarily know how to use it, or like it would take them more effort to learn how to use it. But now, like a 13-year-old could kind of pick up a mic or their iPhone and start
Right.
recording themselves doing whatever, reviews or making things or whatever it is, you know.
It also opened up kind of like what is valuable in society as well.
Mhm.
Because before it was like people valued like Olympics, they valued like,
I fight the Olympics.
you know, they
That pole
valued,
vaulter, holy fuck.
you know, there's like those the top of the notch athletes. Like
Mhm.
it's always, I mean, the Olympics have always been valued since like
Yeah, that's
the
true.
ancient Greece, but now we're talking about kids that are playing online games, like the winner of
Mm.
Fortnite. It's like he won more than Tiger Woods won in terms
Right.
of money, and it's like for somebody to win that much is because somebody's valuing that, you know, that.
Yeah, entire values have shifted for sure.
Mhm.
You no longer have to be athletic. You could,
Right.
if you're skillful on a computer game or whatever it is, you could kill it. You can make your own living.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome for sure. I think also there's like some industries that have like not fully taken advantage of social media and like the platforms that are out there. And I tend to kind of think of those as like the more classical kind of like arts. So I always think of like theater or like plays or like musicals. Whenever I think of those, I always think there's very traditional art forms.
Mhm.
They kind of cater or like mostly target at very older audiences. But something that I've been kind of thinking is like that older audience is going to be fading away, unfortunately. You know, but so it's like, how do these older art forms adjust to this new market, start getting younger crowds interested younger, so that like by the time they're at their 30, 40, they could afford to go to an opera, they could afford to go to a musical or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
Because like right now, like again, kind of talking about Melissa, like she worked at theater, and like there has been a trend like within like that whole community that it's kind of going down as an industry simply because like there isn't enough awareness about like what is they do. But I kind of like ask them, it's like, why don't they do certain things? Like, why don't they take advantage of YouTube? Like literally record yourself, record an entire play, put it up there, or clips of it or whatever it is, you know, like somehow take advantage of what we have here, to kind of like expand your industry, make it have more longevity over time, you know?
For sure.
Because yeah, like right now as a 27-year-old, like I have no desire to go to some of these things.
Right.
Yeah.
One, because like there's just no exposure to it, and then others just like maybe I'm just not interested in something like that. But it's like how they do have like a kind of like a problem that they need to kind of solve and kind of figure out and think of. And sometimes I feel like they hold on to their artwork too much, where it's like they don't, because right now it's like in this age, just put it out, like just throw it
Right.
out there, see if it sticks. If it doesn't stick, cool, try something different. If it does stick, cool, keep doing that. But it's like they're almost like holding on to this, like it has an incredible amount of value, which it does. But it's
But
like
nobody else is
if no
valuing
one's
it.
seeing it, like
Right.
Yeah.
how else are you going to kind of get the word out? How else are you going to bring people
Mhm.
in? So what do y'all kind of think of like older people that are adapting to this?
I think even I'm going to touch back on what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
but I think even in design, like in graphic design, like
Mm-hmm.
before Instagram, there was nothing. Like you didn't see designers putting work on Twitter. You didn't put people,
Didn't exist
huh?
because Twitter didn't exist.
No, but even in this era,
Oh, okay.
like even in this era,
Gotcha.
before, like right before Instagram, there was Twitter, there was
Mhm.
Facebook, MySpace, all these different platforms, blogs. Designers weren't putting their work up.
Mhm.
Like whenever I started looking at designers online, like there was nobody. You just found the famous ones like Segmaster War, like all these famous ones, and there was just a bunch of famous studios. It wasn't until like 2015, 2016 I started looking at the Feature, and they started making tons of content, and now they're just everywhere.
Mhm.
Now Instagram has given kind of designers kind of like that portfolio aspect, and they can do everything on there. But the more classical designers, I mean, they're not. None of them are on or were on there. But it's just one of the greatest platforms right now for designers. Anything you could design, anything for Twitch, for YouTube, for any platform on anything. If
Yeah.
you're a designer, you can design for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely like I think I like how design is that flexible.
Mhm.
It can be applied to so many different kind of fields and mediums, and
Yeah. The 2019 census came out, and it showed for design census, and it showed all the different industries that this design was part of, and essentially it was part of all of them, right? Because you have like agriculture, engineering, all these different things, and it was just part of everything. And you can essentially be part of everything if you wanted, but it also gives you the thing to just be specific on one thing and be awesome at it. And back to your idea or your question, I mean, design has been something classical as well. Like before that, it was just nothing but making design on paper and doing everything just, done the old way, like Paul Rand and all those people. But it's a great thing that, design can just translate through anything. I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Yeah.
And these classical things like opera, the fine arts like painting, sculpture, all these things shouldn't ever go away either.
Right.
Like they're the best of the best at that specific art.
Yeah, we want them to succeed,
right,
for
we
sure.
want them, but where are they? It's like where, like the fine artists that I look at online, like the sculptures and the painters, they're out there producing the same work that the other people are doing, but they're evolving into this platform and creating things and creating short clips. And I'm like, oh man, that's amazing. I could never do that, but I want to see it done. And you're putting these 5-second clips on in front of me, and I want to watch them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like when it comes to like these older kind of art forms that aren't adapting, or like they're holding their stuff too tightly to themselves, I think the younger generations that have interest in these older art forms, like someone's going to be like, you know what, I don't care about like having to put on this super expensive show. Like I'm just going to put it out on YouTube. And I think those are the ones that are going to succeed moving forward. Right. Obviously like these bigger opera houses, like they're going to pull their own crowds. But I think like once someone starts just putting their stuff out there, I think that's going to open the floodgate to not having to hold your artwork so tightly to yourself and just kind of.
I think even like artists had to do that, like singing artists, like rappers and any type of singing artist. Whenever the whole downloading phenomenon happened, and I was like, oh, why do we have to go to record labels and have them produce our stuff whenever somebody's just going to download it, right? And they're not going to pay for it. But
that's not a bad thing,
right? That's not a bad thing, and
because now someone knows,
right? Someone knows about you.
Now you have a fan,
right? So these same principles can apply to these fine arts. They're like, oh, I don't want them to watch the play because I want them to watch it live,
right? Or I want them to pay $500 to sit,
right? But the difference between sitting and watching it on your 2-inch monitor is not the same,
right? Yeah, no, I mean that's a limitation. That's the thing that you're not gonna like,
right? The experience isn't there. That's what you're selling whenever you want people to show up,
right?
Is the experience.
But how do you draw them in though?
Not like, the content though. Like, yeah, the content is 100% important, but with that comes the experience. Like,
yeah. And I think that was like a big talking point too, is like whenever I was talking with Melissa, she was like kind of describing is like the experience is everything when it comes to these art forms. Like that's what people are paying for, which I get. Like I get that people like to go to these big theater operas, they like to make a night out of it. Like it's definitely an experience. Like it's live. It's a live performance. Yeah. But it's like, how do you get foot in the door? Like if your problem is not having enough feet in the door, okay, how do you get feet in the door then? And there's like these great tools of social media that would allow essentially you to do that. You just have to put your stuff out there and not hold it so closely to yourself. So for example, like the example that I gave of the comedian who started just putting out his own skits on YouTube, like he created an online audience, an online following that once he started touring, he was just killing it because he already had this audience all over the US or even all over the world at this point. So it's like, he already had fans in California, in New York, and Texas, and Wisconsin, or whatever. So once he put a show, it was like, hey, I'm coming down to your state, your city. It was easy. He already built that audience because he already put his stuff out there. So I think definitely like being like these older kind of art forms need to be aware of that, and they just need to kind of transition to it, or else they're just going to kind of disappear, which we don't want. Like we want them to exist. We want them to thrive. We want them to have their lane for sure.
But there is a lot of art forms that are classical that have died out, like sign making and all these different things of like, there's only a very few people that do it. they're not dead completely, but they're
Right.
not like a
Yeah.
thriving industry where every single city has 5, 6, 7 different sign shops of somebody hand
Oh,
lettering
yeah, no.
and doing it, right?
Yeah,
So
'cause
it's
they're
like,
printers now and stuff.
right.
Yeah.
So there is going to be industries that are going to die. There's nothing we can do about it, but there's some of them like the classical stuff, like they should be able to take advantage of this platform.
Mhm.
You're like, oh yeah, but you know, the content is what they are trying to sell.
Mhm.
But there's people that do it still, like let's say movies, right? Let's say this movie Avengers. I don't know if you follow that the whole thing that happened with them.
What?
So just the movie that came out, right? So the first part came out, and there was nothing but content for a whole year about what could happen.
Oh,
like
gotcha.
what could
Okay.
happen, what could happen.
Like it left on such a cliffhanger.
Right.
That, yeah.
But also like you could produce content without revealing everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like you could make it to where you can still go to the movies and pay the full price,
Mhm.
but there was content created the whole year about it.
Mhm.
So it's like these classical industries, they could essentially produce small clips, you know,
Mhm.
small thing without revealing everything.
Right.
And same with comedians, like you don't want to reveal everything. So
Just put out one joke.
right. So as well, like some comedians don't allow like
Recording devices.
recording
like,
because
yeah, like Dave Chappelle and stuff.
right. But it's not that they are like Dave Chappelle said. It's not like he's protecting his content. He's protecting the experience of somebody just not ruining it, but just removing the surprising element, right? So it's like you're not, you know,
Like
what's
even
going
like
to happen.
distractions too. Like if someone's phone goes off, like that's a distraction
So
to
you want to
everyone in there,
protect that. You want to protect the experience.
Mhm.
So whenever you're there, you want to have the best experience, and anybody's willing to pay,
Mhm.
you know, high dollar for that. Especially at an opera or something like that, where you just want you know what to expect.
I think also something that was mentioned is that like a lot of these classical kind of art forms also kind of rely on like much bigger teams to put stuff out. So it's not like an artist or a musical artist that just relies himself on it and then his band. He just needs approval of those 5 people to kind of put something up. These bigger productions are like there's like costume designers, there's actors, there's directors, producers, set designers, all these type of things that like everyone kind of has to okay this for it to be pushed out. But it's like I don't know why that's also an excuse when there's like sports. Like sports, you could watch it on TV. You don't have to be at the game to at least view it, see how it goes, and enjoy it to a certain degree. Obviously, if you're there, that's a whole different experience. That levels it, like heightens the experience definitely. But like, just don't think that like everything is shattered and broken if you only view it on your screen. You know, like there's still an element of people wanting to at least see that. At least give me like at least allow me access to seeing it, even if it's just on my monitor or my phone. You know.
Yeah, I think something that you touched on is like this idea of holding on to like the exclusivity or holding on to this art form that you just want to keep sacred. And
like they just want to maintain the, I guess, integrity of it, I guess.
right.
But what integrity though? Or like what do you mean by integrity?
I guess it's like
to keep it exclusive.
Yeah,
keep
exclusive to the customer.
Only there.
Share to the people who paid for it.
Right.
Instead of like recording a live stream for free later on, I guess.
Right. But even then, but if your problem is not having foot in the door, and if you see that your industry is dying, so then what do you do? Like, do you, I think you kind of have to like have like a battle within of like, what is it do I value? Do I value my integrity that much where it's like, I want to keep this exclusive?
Yeah, die with the boat.
Right, exactly. So like, do you care? Do you have that much pride almost about this art form? Because I think like back to kind of what we were saying is like, you don't have to put out the whole thing. Like, I understand that. Like, I imagine these comedians, they don't want their entire like set that they've developed over the last year or two to just be put out entirely for free.
Right. Not if they're doing a tour, but once they're done with the tour, like it could be everywhere, and that's exposure. That's a lot of exposure for them.
But like leading up to or like during their tour, like just put out clips. Just put out one joke or two, or in the case of like a play, like put out one scene, or if it's a musical, put out like one scene of that musical, or if it's like an orchestra, put out one song that was played, you know, like there are things that there's like middle ground, you know. But I feel like a lot of times like there's like not budging, and it's just like, okay.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you.
They don't want to shift and pivot. There's tons of books about that.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. I
they
mean,
also don't want to, you know, whenever you put yourself out there like this content, there's room for judgment everywhere.
Mm.
But if you don't put yourself out there, there isn't, like, the only people that are judging you are the people that are there, that experience that curated experience that you created for them.
Mhm.
But on social media, it's like you're out in the open,
Mhm.
right? It's like a
There's
lot of
like
people.
fear,
Yeah, it's fear as well.
anxiety about being criticized and stuff.
Right.
I get
imposter
that.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome too. Yeah.
But but
That's definitely
that's
something
more
people fight
about the industry, not the individual. So they want the industry to maintain its integrity, kind of like what he said,
Mhm.
to maintain the integrity of being classical, elevated, all these things. And if you put it out there, people are going to see that either it's not, and it's
Mhm.
just another form of art, just another
Yeah. 'cause
creation. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you're out there performing the best theater that you could ever do, but so are sports. Like, they're
Mhm.
performing at the highest level that anybody could be, and
Mhm.
they're always being judged based on the crappy plays that they
Yeah.
make or on the crappy things that they do.
But they're also accessible.
Right.
I think that's
And
the
they're
biggest
also
thing.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So
like, there's definitely
they
like a
have
middle
to
ground.
they have to take the risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like it's probably gonna be like a younger creative that wants to get into these classical fields and just put their stuff out and not
Right.
have to worry about these big like green lights from bigger production companies or something. They're just going to do it themselves, put it out there. And I think whoever does that first or whoever group does that first, I think they're going to take off for
I feel
sure.
like, why hasn't it been done though? Like,
That was also my kind of big discussion whenever I was like talking about this. It was like if you think about it, like it really hasn't happened yet. So it's like, if there's anyone out there that's putting out or like has interest in this, just go fucking put it out and don't worry
Yeah,
about like
that's a good
whatever
answer.
big industry standard that currently exists, and like don't think that that's your barrier to entry. Like just don't worry about it. Just go.
Yeah,
Go
the
do it
same
yourself.
with kind of like broadcasting and like TV. It's like a lot of the companies were just doing commercials,
Mhm.
and it's like nobody's watching commercials. Like,
Mhm.
why are you wasting your money there? Like,
Mhm.
turn, pivot, and shift, and like go towards the direction that the market is going.
Mhm.
Like,
So,
nobody
yes.
has DirecTV anymore. Like, if you do, then what are you doing? Do you
Yeah,
seriously
I don't
want to
know.
pay for every channel's rights?
Yeah, it's definitely kind of delving down to like the streaming
Oh yeah,
thing that's
what we're
changed.
talking about. That's not actually social media, but
Yeah.
then it ties back into kind of like attention.
Mhm.
One thing that Gary Vee talks about social media, it's not that it's a word like social media. It's more like that's the way things are now. Social
Mhm.
media is not one thing. It's just the way things are.
Mhm.
So it's not a thing. Oh, are you into social media? No. Are you into life? Like, that's the way
Right.
things
That's
are.
that's the question. Is like, are you into living right now?
Right. It's not, are you into social media? No, it's just, are you into
Right.
being alive and being part of this
A community of some sort.
Yeah, that's what.
Or this generation or this point in
Right.
time, like it's that big where it's like
Right.
this is something that you can't avoid. Like it's going to affect you one way or another.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in the sense that I know social media is like a really revolutionary thing that connects people of all ages and people around the world and all.
Mhm.
But in a sense, it is, if you think about it, it kind of naturally just weeds out older generations anyway. Because if you think about it, it might just be made. Well, the purpose of it is made mostly for younger generations.
Yeah.
Because even then, as a millennial,
Mhm.
I kind of find it harder and harder now to keep up with technology and social media trends. But I'd be seeing my little sister, who's Gen Z, she's
Mhm.
could intuitively do all this.
Mhm.
So it's also like weeding out millennials slowly now.
Look, we started this.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, we're gonna get weeded out. I mean, that's something that I've acknowledged, just like kind of me personally, is like I hope that I don't get too stubborn in terms of like what I know and what I
Right.
think works. Like I feel like people always have to be adaptable and kind of change to
Right.
what kind of takes off, and be okay with relearning or just learning something new because that's a new thing that we have to use.
Yeah. there's definitely people that are older that are still that were able to shift and turn and go into
Mhm.
that. And like Chris Do, he's pretty old. He's like
Yeah. I don't know. He looks like he's
50,
in his 40s.
50. No,
He's
he's
like-
like
I don't think
50.
he's 50s.
He's like
Yeah.
40
He
something.
might be in
he-
his 30s, and he's probably like crying right now if he ever heard this, like calling him a 40 or 50-year-old. Watch
Sorry,
him be
Chris.
like 37.
Sorry,
He
Chris.
doesn't look that old.
He's pretty old.
Dang.
Okay.
He
Sorry,
even talks.
Christo.
He even talks about it
All right. All right.
because he's been in this industry for like 23 years.
Yeah.
Because I do remember he also mentioned at one point, like, I guess anyone listening to this podcast, I don't know if they know who Christo is, but some background on who this person is that we're talking about. He is a founder of another branding agency called Blind,
Yes.
and they put out content on a channel that they started on YouTube called The Future. So definitely go check those guys out. They're really cool. But Christo is pretty much like the founder of everything.
Yeah, but he surrounds
there.
himself with a bunch of young people
Yeah.
that he can like. He might not know a lot of the new technology or the new trends or anything, but he understands design, business, and he
Mhm.
understands all these things. And if you're able to surround yourself with the right people, you can just kill it anywhere you do.
They
Mhm.
essentially teach each other.
Mm.
You know, they make
Mhm.
up for what they don't have.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I think also he mentioned at one point too that he at one point had to go through kind of a learning phase, like where he had to kind of acknowledge that if he wants to be the face of this company, he has to do it a certain way. Like he has to he pretty much like taught himself how to speak better, how to like emote better, like during interviews or while he's like explaining these things like via YouTube through his videos. So it's like he acknowledged that he had something to work on, which was like almost like a public speaking type thing. And he pushed himself to kind of be better at it. And now they're kind of at where they're at because of it.
Right.
So it's definitely like older generations. That's going to happen to us too. Is like we have to carry that same mindset of like, okay, how do I adapt? How do I learn something new to kind of maybe not learn everything that a 13-year-old kid can do
Right.
these days, but let me use my knowledge at least and apply it in a way that's applicable to like this new thing that exists,
Yeah,
whatever that may
because
be.
just the way we have kind of a perspective of pre-technology or pre-social media,
Mhm.
like some of these younger generations, like that what is it, Gen
Gen Z.
Z.
Gen Z? What is after that?
Does it start back at A? I
Gen
don't know.
A,
ZA.
Z.
Gen ZA, ZAB, Z.
Do they start getting themselves their own names? I thought that too. It was like what comes after Z? I don't know.
I don't
Anyways,
know.
like I forgot. Oh yeah, we have kind of that background of we know what pagers are, we know what beepers are, like
Flip phones.
we know things that worked before, and strategies that worked before that maybe they might work today, maybe they might not work today, but we have that extra level of knowledge of how things were before and how can we apply some of it, if not any of it, like in this age. And maybe this generation, they don't have that knowledge, right?
Mhm.
I think that's an advantage for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah,
Just the way
we were basically a good in between Gen Z and
Right.
the
Yeah,
what's
that's what we were. Gen Z and the boomers,
I think so.
guess? Or generation, because I think we're generation Y. So generation X or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys.
yeah.
Yeah,
those-
we're definitely in between. I think we do have a unique perspective because like we're in between this big old game changer. So we saw
Yeah.
both sides of it. And luckily, like we're young enough to kind of know and learn how to use social media pretty quickly because we grew up with it a little bit older. Like it's not like at 6 years old, I have all the social media accounts on every single platform, but like I was able to like, okay, I know how to use this. I know how to use a computer. I know how to
Right.
use a smartphone. Like, it's not that
Now,
hard.
how we were talking about, this is the way of life, right? So a lot of businesses and mom and pop shops, they're seeing that it's necessary for you to have those things because everyone's on it.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
forces those generations to kind of look at it. It's like without
Yeah.
wanting to. It's like you have to do it, or else your business, if it's not at a great place, I mean, that's
Yeah.
essentially a way of getting it to that place.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's definitely a tool. I do want to say that I don't think it's an end all be all. I know we're hyping up social media a lot right now, but I don't think it's an end all be all as well, where it's a make or break for your business. Because I think there's definitely like local businesses that still kill it on their own, and like as long as they have a great product, like that's how they get their following, or like that's how they get their
Right.
like their success.
For sure.
Well, I think that's a priority over social media,
Right,
over anything, is just having a great product or service. Because there's a lot of companies that don't even have logos or branding or anything. They just have great service and great product.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's number one. And then after that is branding, social media, all these tools to
Kind of grow and expand and
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah. And those older companies, they kind of already had a audience.
Right.
It's just that
Mm.
social media kind of helped with that. They kind of at that point where they might not need it as they do, but you know,
Yeah, there's a lot of also companies that, like, we all know companies like Coca-Cola and all these things, but there's companies beyond that that are the actual manufacturers, the actual people that are these huge companies that own essentially everything.
Mhm.
They don't have a face, they don't have anything, but because they are the ones that
They're
are
the makers,
makers that doing all these things that
manufacturers.
right. So there's a lot of like food companies like Nestle and like all these bunch of them, and they all kind of trickle down into one company that's doing
that owns a lot.
everything. Like
Yeah.
who are they? They don't even
Right.
have a face. They just
Right.
have a
Because they don't need to though. That's
that's
the
the
other thing.
thing. Yeah.
It's like there's certain. It depends on industry really.
Mm,
It's like if you're the manufacturer, you don't need Instagram. I mean,
right.
you can if you really want. Like
Like
but
when we're doing
it's probably not
packaging and
necessary.
stuff, and we're looking at all these
No, man, it's so hard to
manufacturing,
find.
they
If
don't.
anything, they need a better website, like, at least that, or like a
Right.
good phone number to call or email, like because reaching out to them is a pain in the ass.
Right.
God
So there's
damn.
industries that they still don't like. Whatever. Like
Mhm.
I have people coming to me because I am making this stuff.
Right.
Go
So they
make
don't-
it if
they
you
don't-
want.
Right. So
It's
they
like,
don't need the
Crap. Well, I don't have
tool of social
$1
media isn't that
million
important.
factories, you know.
Mhm. Or like all the
Question.
equipment as well.
Right.
what's Nestle?
Isn't that like it's like
It was like Nestle.
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 That's what it is.
I was
What's Nestle?
I was like,
Nestle.
as soon as you said it, I was like, what? I never heard of
There's
that.
people that pronounce different English.
I think it's Nestle. I've never heard Nestle before.
Oh.
No,
but
I think they said it in
Well,
it
Britain.
could all be wrong.
In Britain.
well,
Yeah, it's just Nestle though. So
Oh.
all the cookies and I bet you they make a bunch of stuff we don't even know about either.
Mhm.
yeah.
But yeah. I think something I did also want to kind of touch on is honestly pretty outside of design, but it's also like how social media has affected how we consume news and
Oh my god. Twitter.
yeah. So it's definitely kind of taking it even further into these big decision makers that have a big impact on our lives. Obviously, like in the past podcast, we kind of mentioned how now we have like this immediate kind of feedback that we could give to politicians. But it's also kind of changed how we consume news, and that we don't need a newspaper. We don't need to watch news channels anymore. We could definitely just like follow any kind of social media platform that puts out news, and then that's our immediate kind of connection to it all. I think also something that I think has been a huge benefit is like it's also kind of expanded the conversations that can happen on when it comes to news. Because if you ever watch like news channels, like they'll bring someone very important on for like a 2-minute conversation or a 2-minute interview. It's like, how much information, how much can you really talk about in 2 minutes? Like, what is the point of this?
Like the Democratic
Right. Like,
thing.
oh my God. The debates right now those are annoying in their own right, because it's like, even as like a Democrat or if you're Republican or whatever, like these big discussion, these big debates that they put on TV, like they're so, in my opinion, like pointless. Like you're just getting like, there's like taking shots at each other and getting like these big like highlight
Yeah.
moments, but they're not having like
Just a
discussions
soap
about
opera,
like
yeah.
these in-depth, like important topics, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like now through social media, like through YouTube more specifically, it's like you could put out a podcast where you interview someone at length
Right.
about
Yeah.
something that's very complicated, which would make much more sense.
Yeah, no. Just the nature of social media. I feel like it turned news into a totally different thing, as a sense where people just ingest it as if it's like entertainment instead of like actual news. I mean, of course, there's like a lot of severe
politics as well.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, there's like a lot of severe stuff that happens. It's just that we newer generations ingest it as if it's entertainment. Even like news anchors on like ABC or actual news channels, they kind of turn their news into more entertainment based. You know,
it's like almost like these like viral moments, but they're not supposed to be viral moments. Like this is something that's happening somewhere. Like it's
they're supposed to be talking about important like stuff that's happening in life type things. True. But in a way, they kind of make it more lighthearted in a sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. How do you feel about
I forgot what I was going to say.
Talking about news.
Yeah. So the
social media.
Social media.
Yeah,
so, I was going to talk about print and newspaper.
Okay.
So the news, like social media, like Twitter and all this stuff can be deleted, but in reality it can't. I mean,
like what was said, kind of.
Right. But in print, there's a lot of legal things that go into print. Like if you're in an article, that is essentially proof for some documentation about anything. Like, oh, this was here, and so it's if it's in a printed article, it has legal implications.
Like you can't falsely accuse of someone or something, right? Or like falsely say something about someone,
right? In the print, like there's a lot of legal technicalities in terms of print and newspaper. I don't know how that translates into social media, because social media is just bombardment of just people bullying each other and
or like news articles being thrown out and stuff,
right?
I mean, I think there's still like a level of accountability that's taken. I mean, I don't know, like I don't know like too much about like where you're kind of going into, like if there's how much legal stuff is going into newspapers.
Because you're able to do put stuff out there and have it be once it's written and published. Like that's the thing. It's just being published. Like if you're published in an article, has a lot of weight than being published on a Twitter post, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, like if it's like what if it's like a major like organization that's like putting you out,
right?
I think it still carries the same weight if it's on print or in like a post or something.
Yeah, I mean, those publishers, they already gain notoriety and their own following with, and it's like, you know, magazine articles, they are held to a certain standard, regardless of what quality of work they have. Like Vogue, New York Times, all those magazine publishers, they do e-magazines now, and it still carries the same type of weight. It's just that with social media, it just makes it seem more lighthearted. Like I'm pretty sure the New York Times or any other publisher online that could do the exact same thing as them, the same if they post the same article, I'm pretty sure they would get more credit in terms of like seriousness instead of like social media.
That's kind of what I'm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Because I think also like social media is kind of given rise to this whole immediate public opinion as well, and kind of like what things happen. And I think there's definitely like pros and cons to it. I think like a big kind of con right now is that like people tend to, I mean, myself included, but it's like we'll like only read like the headline and then base our entire knowledge off of just the headline, and then think that we know what the actual backstory of it is just based on this headline, rather than if you read the headline, people are trying to make that thing clickable, so they're going to say some eye-catching shit. But if you actually read into it, I
stopped following that.
Really?
Yeah.
Like all kind of like news articles and stuff.
No, if they say something that's completely different than what the article is, I'll just like, why? They're just trying to provoke me into clicking their links, and it's like, you're able to just upload that video into that same page. Why do I have to go through so many different links to get to that page and then have ads shoved on, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
marketing.
I mean, that's all revenue.
Yeah,
and stuff.
but it's just like, I don't need that, so I'll get rid of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes like you'll even go to the first or second comment and they'll be like, no, this is all a lie. Don't even click on that. Here's the actual content.
Yeah.
You know, so the public's like calling them out.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the pros though. It's like where the public kind of has a voice. They
Right.
could respond to it. It's a discussion now.
Mhm.
It's a dialogue. It's not like
Yeah.
we're on the receiving end the entire time.
Right. So that's again like how newspapers had kind of like this big thing. Like people would post this article, publish this article on a
Mhm.
newspaper, and they'd take it to be true. And it's like, who else could you say, oh, where are your sources? Where is this coming from?
Yeah, it has to have sources.
There's another side to this. But now if somebody posts a post, like somebody will comment with the actual real article or the countering article or the reasons why it's wrong.
Mhm.
So there's definitely a lot of feedback and like discussion nowadays. And since
Yeah, I think definitely like I like how you kind of said that during like the printing age and stuff, like people had to reference their sources and stuff. I think as younger generations that doesn't necessarily grow up with that, obviously we're aware of it, but like we didn't know that that's how you find like good journalism or good news articles is like these references to resources. So like they have like facts backing up like what is it they're saying in this
Mhm.
article. Because I think I kind of find it too often where it's like people will link certain websites or news articles or whatever. And then if you actually read the article, nothing is linked, nothing is
Right.
sourced. So it's like that doesn't give it any credibility. So it definitely, I feel like us as a generation, Gen Z,
We've
Gen
lost
Y,
that. We've lost
millennials,
that.
like we have to learn, like we have to adapt. We have to be like, this
But they
is
taught-
important for
they-
us to
yeah.
figure out, or like this is important to take this thing as a credible news article as like something that is backed by actual journalism, actual
Mhm.
gathering of facts, and
But
they're not
then-
just making up
But then
statements.
those journalists, like if you go to them, they actually have like a biased opinion as well.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's just news.
So that's
in
why you have
general.
to have several sources. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely like social media's like actually opened up that too though, because you could have access to any of it. Like you could
Mhm.
subscribe to Fox, something in the middle, and CNN, and get all three
Right.
thrown at you, and then
That's
make
that's
your own
what
opinion.
I
I,
do.
think that's also an important part though. Is like
to not just be one sided as well.
yeah, I think definitely just kind of at least reading, acknowledging the other
Right.
side, and then forming your own opinion. I think that's
It's
the
like,
biggest thing.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I just don't agree with
Right.
it based on my values.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Yeah. And even then, there's a lot of other YouTubers that make their channels completely on current events and news within their area. And
Mhm.
they go completely off biased. They just state the facts.
Right.
And they're very young.
Mhm.
So again, it's kind of circling back to the younger generation. It's kind of up to them.
Yeah,
And
or like whoever's really putting it out
yeah.
is definitely important. It's kind of like whatever it is that your goal. Do you want to push your own ideology, or are you trying to kind of be strict journalist? Like I'm just putting out what's happening,
Yeah, it's another.
not really kind of picking a side.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
You're excused.
Thanks. But yeah, no, definitely like something else that I've been kind of thinking of is the whole kind of cancel culture that's also kind of come up through social media.
What is that?
Canceled culture. So it's like
Yeah, I'm
say
showing my age.
someone who like 10 years ago put out a very controversial statement. Like they either said something racist or homophobic or something, whether that's in an interview or an article or even like an old Twitter post or something. Like the public is starting to go back to these things, pull those up and kind of like saying like, hey, you said this 10 plus years ago, you're done to me. Like you're done to the public. So like we no longer support you type thing. That's cancel culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty
what
bad.
What do y'all think of how that's kind of like been an ongoing thing, and kind of like how do we
I
kind of
mean,
move forward?
if somebody
Or what do we need to
recorded
acknowledge?
everything that I did in my
Mhm.
20s and told me, look, this is what you were,
Mhm.
I was like, well, yeah, but that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a completely different person now. Like, if
Mhm. yeah,
yeah,
no,
that
I
seems
totally
like
agree.
childish, really.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it really is.
yeah, you're like stuck in the past. Like, yeah, this person, might have done something, but
Mhm.
are they still doing it? If they are, then yeah, cancel them.
Right,
Like,
right.
If they, but if they aren't, and if they're completely different, like why?
Mhm.
So you're just trying to bring somebody down.
Right. No, I totally agree. I'm glad that you didn't know what it was, and that was your reaction to it though, because like this has been like an ongoing theory
Right,
throughout
but-
social
no,
media.
but I knew about it, but I just didn't know the term.
Okay, like what it meant, like
Right.
what was like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm totally in the same boat of like, as long as a person has shown growth, if they acknowledge that what they did was wrong, whatever it was, and that they've like taken steps to better themselves and understand why they did what was wrong, and they've shown that they've done better as a human being, then it should be okay.
Yeah, but a
You
lot
know.
of people do it in order for their opinion to be validated or for their point of view to be emphasized.
Hmm.
Or
It's
for
like-
clout. Or for clout.
Yeah, that too, just to get attention, just to get the clicks.
Yeah.
Like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to call someone out super famous and be like, hey, look, you did this, or here's a
Right.
photo of you
Right.
doing
But-
this. And
Yeah. I think that's what happened to Kevin Hart when he was going to host the Oscars.
Mhm.
He was going to host the Oscars, but somebody picked up something that he said a long time ago when he first started being a comedian,
Mhm.
and they canceled him. They were like, no, you can't. You're not going to be able to do this based off of that.
yeah, like they were forcing him to like apologize
Yeah.
and stuff.
It's like
and-
Kevin Hart doesn't even do anything anymore. Like in terms of his jokes are all super like family oriented about his family and about his experiences. There's nothing controversial.
Right. Yeah. I think it's also kind of forcing us to kind of look at the nuance of each situation. Everything isn't as black and white as what social media makes it seem like.
Mm.
There's a lot of gray area. Like you have to really understand the context of it. You have to understand what the situation actually was. In terms of Kevin Hart's thing, I don't quite remember too much of like what
I don't
I think
remember
it was
what
like
he
he's-
said.
I think
or
he said
what
something-
said.
that was like homophobic back in the day.
Yeah.
But again, that was like 10 years ago. Like ask him again, like now, like what does he think about homosexuality? What does he think? Like where does he stand? Has he changed? Does he acknowledge what he said was bad back in the day? Does he move
Mhm.
forward from there, you know? And if he does, if he checks off all the things, like he acknowledged that he was bad, he's done better things to kind of prove or like improve his mindset towards this topic, then it's like, okay, yeah, you're good.
Right.
Keep living. Cause I mean, that's what every single human being is. Like
Right.
none of us are saints. Like we all,
Right. We all have judgments either as
Mhm.
well. We have judgments towards other races, towards other genders. We have
Mhm.
judgments that we just have based on
Like how we
our
grew
life
up.
and our experience.
yeah.
But we're able to just say, okay, that judgment, well, I can change that because, things aren't that way.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just human nature.
And to
Yeah.
completely just like shut someone out or like completely destroy their careers. If it's justified, it's justified. Like if they haven't changed
Right.
over a certain
But
amount
even
of time.
then,
Yeah,
it's like
but
some people just don't.
Yeah.
As much as you wanted to destroy them or the public wants to destroy them, they just keep on
keep on going.
going.
Yeah.
Mm.
Some people be thriving on that culture though.
Yeah.
Wait, driving on like what culture?
Like some people some
being
people
hated on.
yeah, some people enjoy being hated on because that's what brings in their clout and stuff like that.
Mm.
So some people who are being hated on, they just let it happen because because the haters are the people who are still looking at their stuff,
Mhm.
still paying attention to them.
Mhm.
So obviously it doesn't bother them.
Right.
Well, I mean it bothers them, but probably the money.
a different way.
They
Yeah.
gain off of that.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely think, I don't know. Not really sure where to go from here. I have to be cutting moment.
Yeah, I think we're reaching an hour,
Okay.
an hour 15, an hour 20. So
Close it out.
I think so.
Okay. All right. So that's been today's episode on Untitled Final. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be putting this out on all social media platforms. So Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, I believe. All right, perfect. Yeah. And we'll be putting out all those links on our social media. So keep an eye out for those. And yeah, we'll be putting out podcasts once every 2 weeks. So catch us again in a couple of weeks. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in.
Peace out.
Bye.